Hello. Welcome on back to my channel. Today's going to be a really special day for me because for my model, I have someone whom I go way back with, years back. When I first moved to Los Angeles, we used to work together and all day, every day, I would just do her makeup and play with her hair, and that's where it all really began. This is way before I had even thought about becoming a makeup artist. So the fact that I have her in my makeup chair here today filming a tutorial for all of you fine people here on YouTube, this is all going to be very nostalgic for me. So without going on and on, if you want to learn how I created this look right here, then keep on watching. To start, I'm using the Ultra Facial Cream from Khiels, and I'm applying this onto the face with my Beauty Blender. I used to use this cream all the time to prep the skin, especially when I used to travel because I love the little containers you can get them in, like the one I showed. The skin seems to soak it up pretty quick, and most foundations lay really beautiful on top of it. I make sure to apply this everywhere that I'll be applying the foundation, including the ears, under the chin, down the neck, and chest. For foundation, I'm using the Luminous foundation from Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I'm using the shade 365C on our model Liliana. With the same beauty blender I used for the foundation, I'm just working this into the skin. Now I get people asking me why I apply the foundation to the back of my hand rather than directly onto the skin or directly onto the beauty blender, and I don't really have a rhyme or reason for it or for anything I do. I'm a creature of habit, and I guess it's just always what I've kind of done. I put everything onto the back of my hand first, and if you see my hands enclosed by the end of a tutorial, there's makeup everywhere. It's a disaster. Oh, and also notice here how I bring this foundation up onto and behind the ears and neck. To contour, I'm using the Ultra HD foundation stick from Makeup Forever in the shade Y505. I've used this a few times already on my channel, so you know how much I love it. It's creamy, it's super blendable, long-lasting, pigmented. I could go on and on and on. It's diverse for areas like around the temples and cheekbones where I want to sheer out the contour a bit, and then it could also be opaque enough for areas like underneath the jawline where I want to have a little bit more product payoff. And as I've said before, I'm not spending too much time on trying to perfect the placement of this product. I'll worry about all of that once I start the blending process. So I'm applying this to underneath the cheekbones, the jawline and chin, the perimeter of the forehead, and down the sides of the nose. And you can be as extreme as you want to be with the contour and highlight process. My style is glam, and Liliana loves glam. So we were cracking up thinking about the times I would try to contour her face, and it would always turn out like a disaster. You guys, I wish I had taken photos back then because y'all would have gotten a kick out of it. But even years later, with as confident as I've become with makeup, there are still times I take a step back and think to myself, what in the world have you done? But ultimately, it's just makeup. It's not that serious. Nothing's permanent. So if you're a newbie with contour, don't stress about it. It's all good. You'll get the hang of it. And I think that's another reason why I love having Liliana as my model today, because she's an everyday kind of girl. And I love doing makeup on people who aren't quote unquote models, because I think it makes these tutorials a little bit more relatable for us people who don't have what we think to be born with already perfect cheekbones or eyes or skin or whatever it may be. But ultimately, I do these videos for you. So let me know, do you like when I do makeup on proper models, or do you prefer I use everyday people, or should I switch it up every so often? Let me know down in the comments. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Okay, so now that we have the contour about 90% blended out, I'm gonna move on to concealing and highlighting. For that, I'm using one of my favorites, the Kevyn Aucoin Sensual Skin Enhancer, and this is in the shade SX04. I begin by placing this with a concealer brush underneath the eyes, starting from the inner corner and working my way outwards towards the temples. I love a really bright under eye, so that's why I opted for such a bright concealer shade, but you can definitely fine tune it depending on what you prefer. I'm also placing some of this concealer directly in the center of the forehead and fanning it outwards, tracing the eyebrows. Later on, you'll see how this really just lifts and strengthens the brow shape. And of course, I'm highlighting down the center of the nose, Cupid's bow, and chin. I even used what I have left over of that concealer to place right at the corners of the mouth, which will brighten and lift that area too. So now that we have that cream placed, I'm gonna start blending it out with my beauty blender. You'll notice that this video is a little longer than the ones I've posted before, but only because I know a lot of y'all like watching the blending process. So for those of you who do, keep watching, and for those who prefer to speed up, you can definitely fast forward to the next step. Alrighty, so now that we've gotten through that, let's start with setting the face. With the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Loose Setting Powder, I'm going to start with setting the under eyes, and I'm using a powder puff to do so. I love using a powder puff for these kind of steps because it allows me to really press that powder into the concealer. And I'm not being shy with the powder. Since we use such a thick concealer, I need to somewhat be generous with the powder so we don't experience any creasing later on. In my experience, the thicker the foundation or concealer used, the heavier I can get away with the powder without it looking cakey, because ultimately, those thicker concealers can really handle powder. They really soak it up compared to, let's say, a concealer with a thinner formula, which powder would just sit on top of. You may have noticed earlier that I blended the concealer onto the upper eyelids, so it's important to set that too. But before I do, I'm buffing out any creasing with my finger before taking an eyeshadow brush and setting it with our setting powder. I don't really use primers, let alone eyeshadow primers, so this set concealer will take its place. And now I'm going to set the rest of the face using a lot less powder than you would normally see me use. I knew at this point I was going to style Liliana's hair into a ponytail or something out of her face, so I can get away with not entirely setting around the forehead. Therefore, it won't be completely matte, so the shine from the oils and the creams I used earlier will really amplify the glowy skin look I want to achieve. I love using this technique when I can, but I can really only use it when the hair is going to be out of the face, because if the hair isn't out of the face, it'll move the makeup around and it just becomes one big ol' mess. To add a little bit more color, I'm using a bronzer from Morphe in the shade Debutante, and I'm using this just to reinforce the areas we had contoured. I used to use this bronzer all the time. I love using bronzers that have that yellow golden undertone, and this one is perfection. And as you see, I'm being extremely light-handed with this, using more of a pressing motion with this brush because remember that the contour isn't quite set or matte, so I don't want to drag it, and I definitely don't want the bronzer to appear muddy, so I'm using a very little bit of this pigment. Watching this footage, I'm just realizing I could have blended out the contour on the jawline a little better. It's a little harsh, but what can I do now? This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about still having, after these years, mistakes and mess ups, but I really don't sweat it. I don't think it looks too crazy in the final footage. Okay, so here I'm just applying more of our Huda Beauty setting powder to bake underneath the eyes and the center of the nose. I don't know what happened to the footage of me applying the powder down the nose, but basically with a makeup wedge, I almost like stamp the powder down the center. You can totally do this with a brush, but I like using wedges from time to time because their sharp edge makes this step super easy. And now with an eyeshadow blending brush, I'm just working in some of our Morphe bronzer onto the lid and crease. This will act as our transition shade and it will help tie in the whole look. But before we start on the eyes, I'm going to complete the brows. I first start with using some translucent powder to mattify the brow, and then I use my Brow Wiz by Anastasia Beverly Hills in shade Soft Brown to fill it in. Liliana already has the best brows, so I don't want to go overboard with filling them in. I want to keep it very soft, so I'm lightly just going back and forth with the Brow Wiz to build up some color and depth. And I'm focusing this product on the outer half of the brow. Okay, so this brow is just about done, and to save time, I'm going to do the other brow off camera. Then with my Urban Decay Born to Run eyeshadow palette, I'm going to start on the eyes. The first shade I'm using from the palette is called Punk, and it's a deep brown color. I'm using this shade in the crease and outer corner to start building up the eye shape that I want. I've had this palette for so long now, and even though it looks busted, I've really only used it like 3 or 4 times, and I'm warning you now, this eye look was a struggle for me today. Do you guys ever have those days where you just keep on adding on eyeshadows in hopes that it will look better, but your vision still doesn't come to life and it just keeps getting worse and worse? Yeah, I was having one of those moments with this eye look. I mean, it all ended up working out, but no doubt, the way this video is edited makes it look a lot easier for me than it actually was. And as you see, it's a lot of back and forth to get this blend right. I'll apply a bit of that brown eyeshadow, and then I'll take the fluffier blending brush to buff it out. Next, I'm dipping into the shade Wanderlust, which is this olive toned color with a gold shimmer in it, and I'm applying this onto the inner half of the eyelid. This is where things started to take a turn for me. I wasn't head over heels in love with the way the shadow was looking, but I was being optimistic and I was just hoping for the best. And since there is that shimmer in the shadow, there was a bit of fallout, so I just placed a little extra setting powder underneath the eyes to catch any of that fallout. And then with the golden taupe shimmer shade called Smog, I'm placing that right in the center of the lid and the inner corner. At this point, I'm just throwing on any shade in hopes it'll make it look better. I told you, it was a struggle. So I'm going back to that olive shade and mixing that pigment onto the back of my hand with some setting spray. And this will not only help with color payoff, but it will also help there from being more fallout. And with the blending brush, I'm just working this into the lower lash line and smoking it out. And then with the black eye pencil, I'm running this through the outer corner waterline. And in case you want to know, this eye pencil is Smolder from MAC. But of course, I'll list it below in the description box along with all of the other products I used to create this look. And I'm also using this to run through the upper lash line. Because I want to take it one step further, I'm using my black gel liner from Inglot to give us a little drama. Now, if you don't want to go so dramatic with the eye look, then you can totally skip this wing liner step and just stick to the pencil we had just added. But I think this winged liner was what this eye look was missing. So I'm going pretty bold with it. And to give us that extreme feline looking cat eye, I'm bringing this down to the inner corner to extend it inwards. And for the last eyeshadow I'll be using, which is the black shadow in the palette, I'm running this through the bottom lashes, focusing on the outer third. Next, I'm gonna coat the lashes with the Urban Decay Perversion Mascara. And as you can see, I added the lashes off camera. For the top lashes, I used Tatti lashes, the ones that they had created in collaboration with Pretty Little Thing. And for the bottom lashes, I used the under lashes individuals, also from Tatti lashes. They are my new obsession. If you guys have never put on bottom lashes, try these out and thank me later. They're life-changing. So the baking powder has been wiped off, and now with the Wanderlust blush from Buxom in the shade Dolly, I'm adding a little color back to the cheeks. And to really make the skin glow, I'm going to use the Soho highlighter from Ofra Cosmetics. As you can see, this looks so beautiful on the skin. I'm using this on the high points of the cheekbones and on the forehead, directly above the brows, but not completely in the center of the forehead because otherwise it can look like you have an oily T-zone. And I bring this down the center of the nose and Cupid's bow as well. With a KKW Beauty Lip Liner in shade Nude 2, I'm gonna line the lips. So the vibe I'm going for the lips is a deep, brownish, red, bronzy, nude color. Okay, that was a lot, but you'll see what I mean here in a second. And of course, it'll be glossy. What else can you expect from me? Once I have the lips lined, I'm going to use a lipstick to fill them in. It's actually a liquid lipstick from Anastasia Beverly Hills in the shade Mod, and it's this really unique terracotta shade that's perfect for what I'm trying to achieve. I feel like the red undertones in the lip color are going to complement the green hues in the eyeshadows nicely. And as you see, I'm not going in real heavy with this lipstick. I'm shearing it out a bit on the lips to make it appear more as a wash of color. And for gloss, I'm using one from Milani in the shade Rosy Bronze. Of course, if you're a makeup artist applying this on a client, I'd recommend using a lip brush to remain sanitary, but I just applied the gloss directly from the wand because I intended on giving this gloss to Liliana. And for the final step, I'm using the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray to set the face. And that's how we took Liliana from beautiful to showstopper. There we have it, kids. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give this video a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also check out more of my work on my Instagram at PAINTEDBYSPENCER. And until next time, I'll see you soon.